Hello, female Frodo Baggins here. The following scene is from a nearly universally panned movie. It came out 20 years ago and currently has a score of 28% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is lower than critics have given any major blockbuster this year. Yet, it might have a better scene in it than anything in its reboot. The scene is this. In the scene, we see the character of Ben Grimm, who has recently transformed into the Thing after a space accident. According to the new Fantastic Four movie, you'll all know the story. And this is a scene where his wife, not being able to put up with his appearance, takes off her wedding ring and puts it down in front of him. A very heartbreaking scene. But what makes it even more heartbreaking, and with the development of Ben Grimm's story in this movie, he bends over to pick up the ring, but he can't, because his new rock form won't allow him to. But then Reed Richards, his best friend, comes up and without saying a word, picks it up and gives it to him. And what this says is not only just the pure misery of Ben Grimm in his new form as the Thing, where his wife has left him over it and he can't even pick up her ring, can't even pick up the last pieces of it, just as that has happened because of this rock form. Without saying a word, his best friend realizes his pain and picks up the ring for him. And this is better character development, a better character moment than anything I saw in the recent Fantastic Four film. Now, I've now seen Fantastic Four 2025 twice. You see, after everything, I am still Marvel's best customer. When I first watched Fantastic Four, First Steps, aka the 2025 version, I thought it was far better than any Marvel movie that has been released recently. But how much is that really saying, honestly? But I did find at least some things to really enjoy about it, so I tried to go for a second time. And honestly, my second watch of Fantastic Four First Steps was even worse than the first. The beginning was very middling, the middle part had some good action scenes and some interesting ideas, but then the final act completely fell flat for me. I felt absolutely nothing during it. And why? Well, I would attribute that to a total lack of character development. The movie just does not put much focus or effort in developing who the characters are. There's little moments and scenes that try to give you something from them, but none of the main four cast goes on an arc. It's a bit odd, in fact, that in this new Fantastic Four movie, the Fantastic Four are established as almost like these celebrity gods who have achieved nearly world peace on their planet, and everyone trusts them. So to the point where even where there's a major breach of trust in the middle part, all it takes is a speech to bring them back on their side. At the ending battle, I think the reason why everything falls flat is nothing is a payoff to anything. Because once again, there were no arcs for any of the lead four characters in the film. The only person who got anything was, surprisingly, the Silver Surfer. The way that the Fantastic Four were presented or not presented in the new movie made me feel nothing for them. I didn't feel any sort of connection. Now, compare that to the universally panned 2005 movie. Now, I'm not saying it's a great film or even a good film, and I had a lot of problems with it when I first watched it, but looking back, it's amazing how this movie is coming up in the conversation with the new one, and people are finding good things about it. Something that the 2005 Fantastic Four does very differently than the new one is it does not start them off from this idea that they are the celebrity gods of their universe who solve all the problems, and that even the breach of trust in the movie is very, very brief. The Fantastic Four in the 2005 version are very much human beings. There is a focus in the movie on character arcs, bringing the characters from point A A to point B by the end of it, taking them from regular flawed individuals into flawed people who can still be heroes. And while, once again, I think that this movie in and of itself is very flawed in that execution, I do think that Ben Grimm has the best arc in the film. We see him first with his rock form, trying to meet his wife, who is initially happy to see him, but then horrified by his rock form. And then, of course, later on, we get the scene where she has totally rejected him and given up her ring, which he can't even pick up, even though Reed, as a gesture of their friendship, does it for him. But what the movie deals with is Ben Grimm's self-hatred. He cannot accept himself in this form whatsoever, until he eventually meets Alicia Masters, who finally tries to give him some encouragement to teach him how to not hate himself. And then by the end of the film, we see that they may have formed a relationship, indicating that Ben is learning how to deal with his new rock form and learn how to love himself even in this new form. We don't get any of that in the 2025 film. You wouldn't even know that Reed and Ben are supposed to be best friends or any of their history from watching this film. There's only one scene where Ben refers to him as pal. There's a little something in the background where Ben is nervous about talking to a girl, and later on in the film he comes to see how she's doing, but that's pretty much it. It's really sparse. It's like these tiny little salt flakes in the movie, and you really have to look for it to see anything. The movie really didn't want to do anything with Benjamin Grimm. In fact, I wouldn't blame you if you came out of the film and didn't think that there was anything with him at all, because it doesn't want to focus on his character development or who he is as a person whatsoever. And the same thing goes with every character in the film once again. There's little things here and there that give insight into who they might be as characters, but the movie is not focused on the character development itself, and it's not focused on making sure that these people are relatable or that we care about them as individuals. I heard someone describe this movie in part as having a lot of cardboard cutout characters, whether it's the crowd in this new retro 60s universe or the Fantastic Four themselves, and I overall think that that's pretty accurate. But it's interesting to me to go back to old films that were panned or received with a lot of negativity from the past and find out that they actually have a lot of character work that we just don't typically see today. Let's look at another example, Spider-Man 3. Now, when I was first getting into superhero films, I remember Spider-Man 3 was received with a lot of vitriol. Like, I oftentimes saw it on a bunch of top 10 worst comic book movie ever made lists. This was years ago. Now, it's amazing because Spider-Man 3 used to be blasted by people, but if you look at the film, there's actually a lot of good in it. Now, infamously, Sam Raimi, director of Spider-Man 3, wanted it to be a smaller and more intimate story with the Sandman as the villain, and to be a story about forgiveness, about Peter Parker learning to forgive the person who killed his uncle. But it got derailed when Avi Arad wanted it to be a movie that included Venom. So the result is famously what we all know, an overly bloated film that had a lot of infamously cringy and memeable scenes within it.
Eating was nuts. Go make me some.
But looking back at the film today, it has a lot of good in it, once again, that you just don't typically see in movies anymore in terms of what it does with its character development and what it does with its themes. Sam Raimi still got his movie about forgiveness. He used the black suit Spider-Man story to try to weave into that, with Peter Parker all of a sudden falling into temptation, making a lot of mistakes himself, even as he can't forgive the man who killed his uncle. And meanwhile, you have Harry Osborn becoming the Green Goblin, and there's a theme of forgiveness running through there, where Harry can't forgive Peter for allowing his father to die. And it builds up throughout the film, throughout a series of mistakes that both Peter and Harry and the Sandman make, and Topher Grace's Venom, to where we finally get it all coming together by the end of the film, where Peter Parker is finally able to make the decision to forgive Sandman for what he's done, because he recognizes all the terrible things that he has done. And it's honestly a really poignant scene.
I'm not asking you to forgive me.
I've done terrible things too.
And once again, this was considered like the baddest of the bad at the time. I just remember Spider-Man 3 getting so panned at the time. And yes, it is overly cluttered. And yes, there are a lot of stupid moments and things like that. But Sam Raimi pulled through with something here when it came to the character development. Which is why I think that Spider-Man 3, compared to what we watch now, is really worth a rewatch. And once again, it's far better character work than what you see in the recent Fantastic Four movie. Or pretty much any superhero movie these days, I might say. You want one more example? Let's go to Doctor Strange 2016, a movie considered thoroughly mid at its time of release, but even that has more character development than the Fantastic Four movie. You really established who Doctor Strange is in the beginning of the film, that he's a man driven by ego, but you break it down throughout the film and explore that ego is really driven by fear and his fear of failure. So as he is broken down as a person throughout the film and goes on a journey where he discovers himself and has to come to terms with these flaws, that's why it is such a payoff at the end of the film. After he starts off at a certain high point where he's confident about the way that he's living, gets broken down, and by the end of the movie, when he's challenged to change, he makes that change. And that's why it's so satisfying at the end, where the person who was scared of failure makes the ultimate sacrifice by putting himself in an endless time loop where he has to experience failure over and over and over again until he has saved everyone else. Now, Doctor Strange, everyone considered it a middling film when it came out, but looking back at it now, it still has better character development than a lot of mainstream films that I see today. Now, obviously, I've been just comparing comic book movies for the beginning part of this video, but you don't just have to compare comic book movies here. Just look at any genre. If you look at movies coming out in the past, whether it's comedies, dramas, romantic comedies, or action films, or whatever the case, they all typically had a better handle on character development than we do now. Let's look at a film that I actually personally love a lot, A Knight's Tale. The reason why I bring up A Knight's Tale is this was another film that was really overlooked and not very well received by critics when it first came out, but it did garner a cult following at the time. And if you look at the film, it's got your character arc in there. It's got a character who is at a low point. He wants something. He has his strengths and his weaknesses, and we're going to watch him go through the highs and lows to get that thing. The movie is about jousting, but it makes sure that its main focus is on who this character is, why we should care about him, and why we should relate to him. And trust me, just once again, look at the older films. Look at films of different genres. These days, they would be considered of being too cliched and too reliant on tropes, but the reason why they're reliant on tropes is because they worked. Like, you don't necessarily have to have a character arc as your way to develop your main characters. That's just a very typical way that works, and that's why they went to that and prioritized that in the past. And I think that that's why we used to, and I know that we used to, get a lot more consistently good films. Yeah, we got some bad stuff that absolutely still does not hold up today, but I think that the reason why we look back at old films and that were even panned in the old days and just find a lot of good things about them now is that we don't get those things as much. Now, I'm not trying to disparage anyone, and anytime you bring this up, it instantly is read as disparagement. So please hear me out. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this. But I think our standards have become low when it comes to film. Low so that when we see a film like Fantastic Four, we think that it's great. We think that it's a good film, or just so much better than anything else that we've been seeing because our standards have become so low, even though it doesn't hold a candle to the things of the past, and in a lot of ways, it doesn't even achieve the same things that the panned one from the 2000s did. Now, once again, hear me out. Before you take offense, hear me out. Why did people disparage Spider-Man 3 so much when it first came out? Even as we look back at it now, it actually had a lot of good things to it. Well, it's because people were comparing it to the films being released at that time, and it not being as good as other films that they were seeing. It wasn't as good as the first two Raimi Spider-Man films. It wasn't as good as perhaps The Dark Knight. It wasn't as good as a lot of the other films that were coming out at the time that people were used to seeing. So that was people's standard. So when a movie like Spider-Man 3 came came out, it was far below those standards, so of course it received a lot of negativity. The same thing for Doctor Strange. Wasn't a panned movie, but people didn't think it was that great because it wasn't that great compared to what they had been getting up to that point. The same things as a lot of those old films that I could bring up got a little bit disparaged because maybe they were a little too cliched, but now we look at them as being so much better now because they at least understood the basics of storytelling. Standards for what is good quality or not good quality are going to be relative because you're going to be comparing it to what you're seeing in that specific time. So now the reason why we look at a film like Fantastic Four and go, "Way, it's better than a lot of this other stuff we've been seeing," is because our standards are so low. Perhaps it is better than Jurassic World Rebirth. Perhaps it's even better than Superman. Perhaps it's definitely better than a movie like Captain America: Brave New World and Snow White. But that still doesn't mean it's good. In a lot of ways, Fantastic Four might even just be style over substance. I was thinking that a lot when I watched the film on my second watch. It actually does not do a lot with its themes, even though it presents a really interesting theme and conflict there. It doesn't do much with it. And it doesn't even get the bare basics right when it comes to character development. It's really not that great, but it just seems great because people are so used to things that are so much worse. But the reason that I would look back at a movie like as panned and as awful as Fantastic Four 2005 is that it shows that character development, basic character development, used to be understood. And far more films used to have the success of having basic character development than they do now. That character development that gets you to care about something in the film because character trumps everything else. Character trumps cinematography, style, even the main plot of the movie. You have to get your characters right or people won't care about anything. People won't be able to rewatch your movies again. Like, I don't think I really ever have any reason to rewatch Fantastic Four now after having seen it twice. But now films that do good character development, at least the mainstream ones, they're fewer and farther between, and that just shows how far we've fallen, that now we're looking back at some of the films considered bad as mainstream blockbusters in the past, and we're finding a lot of good in them compared to now. But as mad as people might get at me for being negative on all those movies, I'm not going to change my standards, and honestly, you shouldn't either. We should not change our standards about this because we're never going to dig out of this time of terrible American media unless we remember what good writing and storytelling and character work were. And I just still know that there is so much better out there than a movie like Fantastic Four 2025 or Superman or Jurassic World Rebirth. And I'm going to keep on working to get those films. Guys, I'm just working on the last scene of my script right now. I will have an announcement soon. But thank you all for watching this video. This was really interesting for me to talk about. Would you like more videos like this that compare old movies to now? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you members and patrons for supporting this channel. If you'd like to become a patron, it's $5 per patron, or a member, it's only $2.99 per member. That's also a great way to add a quick donation if you just want to sign up temporarily. Thank you all for watching and supporting me, and I will see you guys next time.